All right, everybody. It is now 4 o'clock, so we're going to go ahead and get started. So first, I'd like to introduce Brianna Kua. She is joining us today. She's our Director of Marketing and Brand Communications with Maven. So if you see any of those awesome social media posts, our newsletter, our STEM challenges that go out directly to our website and our newsletter. So if you get those, that's all Brianna, and we couldn't do without her. She's going to be helping us moderate today. My name is Matt Garcia. I'm co-owner of Maven. My wife Jamie, we founded Maven back in April of 2016. If you are not familiar with us, we started here in the local metro area of Houston and surrounding areas, so regions 4, 5, and 6 mostly, if you're familiar with Texas. And we've been blessed enough to grow and expand and meet great people like Eli and Carlos today from PyTop. So I want to get into a few housekeeping rules before we get started. So if you were already in here, we are going to use the chat quite heavily. I see a lot of action going on in there already. So thank you very much for being so engaging. So if you have any questions, or if you're using PyTop or just anything cool, just go ahead and pop it in the chat and let us know. And if it's a quick question that we can answer on the spot, we'll just jump in and interrupt Eli and see if he can give us a quick answer. But if it's going to be an answer that you think is going to be a little bit more in depth, like purchasing specific lesson plans or anything like that, why don't you go ahead and use the Q&A function that you'll see at the bottom of your screen. I think unless it's changed, it might be at the top of your screen if you're on an iOS device. So we highly encourage all of your questions. No question will get answered unless you ask them. So again, use the chat box, use the Q&A. Also, follow us at maker_Maven on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. We're going to want you to be really engaged throughout the presentation on social media as well, because we're going to be doing a giveaway. So one winner is going to be chosen through social media interactions during the presentation for a PyTop 4 and a foundation kit. So great way to get started if you don't have PyTop already, where you can get some cool free stuff right off the bat. So don't be shy about taking screenshots, shouting us out. Remember, it has to be tagged both Maven and PyTop to win. So now that all of that's out of the way, I want to take time to introduce our two guests today. So we have Eli Phillips, the Content and Community Development Lead for PyTop, and we have Carlos Sanchez, Channel Accounts Executive for PyTop as well. So that's it for me. Nobody's here to listen to me talk all day. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Eli, and he can teach us a little bit more.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and unmute there. Give me just a second to get my slideshow up. Is everyone able to see the further browser window there? Are we seeing that okay? Awesome.
Yes,
okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and load up the presentation then. And thank you for that, Matt. And everyone who's here, thank you for being here. My name is Eli, and I am, like we said, the Community and Curriculum Development Lead at PyTop. And as you probably know, today, we're going to be talking about learning, work, and the future. And so my goal with this is to address how things are going to be different in the future, specifically for the workforce, and what we can do for students who are in learning environments today to help prepare them for what we're going to be seeing in the future. And before I do this, I'll just give you a little bit of background information about me and about the company, so you can understand maybe why we're qualified to talk about these things at all. I got started teaching about 15 years ago. I helped run a summer art program for kids for a few years. And then when I moved to Austin, I got involved with the Austin Children's Museum as part of a program funded by Dell. And that program worked with teachers and schools specifically to bring new technology and STEM concepts into the classroom. So we were developing curriculum and training teachers, offering PD, doing all sorts of sort of new and different stuff there to figure out new ways of teaching and ways of teaching new concepts or trying different things. So now I'm at PyTop, and I work with teachers and engineers, and software people, and I develop content for use with learners. And as for PyTop as a company, we design products specifically focused on the future of education and how we can make new things happen right now. So we use modular technology to create opportunities for learning by making. And the learning we promote is all skills-based. So we aren't interested in kids just regurgitating facts. We want them to develop skills that they can apply to problems out in the real world. That's why the projects on our website all apply to real-world challenges. And all of this is based around the PyTop 4. So the PyTop 4 is a modular computer that's at the center of our learning ecosystem. And here you can see the PyTop 4, and you can start to get an idea of how it connects to that ecosystem of accessories to help teach project-based learning in ways that are collaborative, customizable, and personal. And those are going to be important things to what I'm talking about. So the first thing that you see on the top left there is the PyTop 4 connected to our screen and keyboard. And that gives you all of the advantages that you'd have with a laptop or a tablet. It's got a touch screen. The PyTop can actually connect to the back of that screen if you're not using the actual physical PyTop itself. It just kind of disappears and becomes a laptop, or you can have it in front of you for projects. To the right of that, you actually see a desktop setup where the PyTop could be used like in a computer lab. On that monitor there, you see our further learning platform that has all of those projects I was talking about. And then down to the bottom left, you see a PyTop making use of our foundation kit of accessories, so sensors, inputs, outputs, buttons, and integrated that with Lego. And this is a good example of the sort of like open-ended project-based learning type results that you can get using just the PyTop and the foundation kit. So I'm going to come back and talk about these things a little bit more later, but I wanted to give you at least a little bit of an idea of what those products look like. And I also want to take a moment to give special mention to our newest product, which I think is really fantastic as a tool for the sorts of things we're going to be discussing today, and that's our robotics kit. And since I have you all as a captive audience, I'm going to just like geek out on the robotics kit for a second. And my wife is in the other room quietly thanking you for being forced to listen to me so that she doesn't have to hear me talk about another robot again. But the robotics kit is a like absolutely fantastic tool for learning. It's got a ton of configurations that you can do that we've kind of figured out ourselves that will all achieve different goals and serve different purposes. Not just like as a robot, they can do different things, but also for learning, they can all do different things, which I think is really fantastic. The accessory kit that comes with the robots, you know, the camera and the motors and things, beyond the stuff that we've designed, they actually open up a whole world of project-based learning opportunities where kids can be designing new things themselves or exploring and figuring out new ways to use it beyond just the things that you're seeing here that we've figured out. And I'm a hands-on learner myself. So the robot kit, you know, speaking personally, has been, for me, the reason I'm geeking out about it is it's a fantastic sort of entry point into all of the nerdy robotic stuff that I dreamed about doing, like when I was a kid watching like Donatello from the Ninja Turtles, or like James Bond, or you know, Egon from the Ghostbusters, all these people who are just like building robots and things. Like this is my entry point to that. And it took me 30 some odd years to get to it, but it's because this is I think a fantastic hands-on learning experience product for that. And I'm really lucky because I get to work on the curriculum that we're designing on our website to teach people how to do those things. So as I'm learning, I'm getting to figure out ways to share the things that I'm learning with everyone else. This is like an early prototype of one of the lessons that we've actually refined since then. I just really like that animation of the little guy driving around there. So, you know, this is just one example, but we're going to get to introduce so many new concepts as we develop more content for it, things around like object recognition and computer vision and machine learning and so on. So I think all of that's really special. And I just, anytime I get an audience, I want to take a moment to talk about it. But it's also a really good segue back into what we're actually here to talk about, which is our main topic here: learning, work, and the future. So I want to talk about those ideas, but I also want to cover 3 other sort of big ideas that relate to those. And those other ideas are personalization, collaboration, and technology in general. And each of these words actually maps to the first 3 words that I chose as the title for this presentation, because I specifically want to talk about personalized learning. I want to talk about collaboration and its importance in the workforce. And I want to talk about how technology can help us get there in the future. So, you know, the first of these words, personalization, for me, when I'm talking in this presentation, is going to mean personalized learning. Personalization is coming for everything. We're going to have personalized tools. We're going to have personalized goals and objectives. And in order to achieve these things, we're going to need personalized learning. So I want to talk about how that works. The second one, collaboration, matters a whole lot for the future of work. Talking about collaboration right after personalization is kind of an interesting thing because they're opposites in a way. I'm saying like we need to personalize the learning to the individual, and then we need to teach people how to all collaborate with each other. So it's like one is the individual and the other is the group, but they're both hugely important to how things are going to be in the future. And finally, because I'm going to kind of set us up with a lot of challenges that we're going to have to solve moving forward, I want to talk about technology, which is how we're going to solve those challenges. Technology is going to provide us the tools and the opportunities to make the things happen that we need to make happen for learners so that they can succeed in work in the future. So let's start by talking about personalization. So like I said, I think personalization is coming for absolutely everything in our lives. And I don't just mean in terms of education or jobs, but I mean like literally everything. I worked at a makerspace for a little while, so I'm like very familiar with 3D printers. I have several like just scattered around my house. But we're going to be personalizing like the things that we buy. Your furniture and your clothes are going to be in the future as personalized and as customized as your fast food drive-through orders, which can initially sound like an unbelievable statement, like the idea that your kitchen table is going to be personalized to you. But it will be. And there's no reason to think it won't, because I've seen the technology and it's there. And we're already moving in that direction with other things too that I love rambling on about. Like if you think about your Spotify playlist, like every day or every week or whatever, you wake up and Spotify has just made a new playlist that's just for you. Like they didn't make it for anyone else. They looked at the things that you like and they said, they're going to like these things. Or I bet they've forgotten about these songs that they used to love. Let's give them a nostalgia playlist. Netflix does the same thing. Growing up, I sat down and I had a limited selection of TV channels that absolutely everyone else had. Or I would go to the library and pick out from the same list of movies that everyone else could pick out. Netflix now not only provides me the new stuff, but it also says, here's our recommended track of stuff just for you. They're personalizing it. When you go on YouTube, the content is personalized, but the ads are personalized too. When you go on social media, it selects which posts it's going to show you based on which ones it thinks you're going to get the most engagement to. Your Instagram stories are arranged by who they think you will want to see the most coming in first, So this stuff is coming for absolutely every part of our lives, and it absolutely also applies to our topic today, which is learning. So let's talk about personalized learning. I'm going to handle this in collaboration in the same way by talking about what is personalized learning, why does personalized learning matter now, and what should we do about it? And I'll address that last one towards the end of the presentation, but I'll tackle the first two now. So what do we mean when we talk about personalization, when we talk about personalized learning? This is a very conveniently stolen definition from the Wikipedia, which in this situation I think is perfectly sufficient. When we talk about personalization, we're talking about the efforts to tailor education to meet the different needs of the students, which is a really like vague, broad, nebulous thing. But that's the idea of personalization, is it is vague and broad and nebulous until you get to the individual, right? Because when we're talking about it, we can be talking about how some students might need to work at a different pace. They may move faster or slower than other students. Some students may, only want to engage with certain types of interests, or they may learn better when they talk about certain subjects than others. The example I always give is I'm terrible at math. And I see kids today who, when they're in their math class, they're building video games. And guess what? I definitely would have tried harder in math if when I was in 3rd grade, I'd been making video games. So tailoring things to kids' interests and showing them how it's going to be relevant to them is a huge form of personalization. And then focusing on their strengths and weaknesses. Like I said, if you can isolate the things that they're good at and show them how they can excel at those things specifically. I always think about, I taught a group of kids 3D modeling. We were teaching like 3D modeling and 3D printing and building 3D stuff in Minecraft and all these different things. And there was one kid who was just blowing past everyone else. He was doing amazing. And I told his teacher, I was like, he's like one of the best students in the world. And she said, he's dyslexic and he's behind in every other thing that he does. But he goes home and he focuses on this thing because he's good at it and he can be good at it. And he's obsessed with it because of you guys. And it's like giving that kid a pathway that he can focus on and feel good about so that he can care about his education. That's a huge opportunity that we have through personalization. So when I talk about this, I'm talking about these specific opportunities that we have. And I recognize that most of these are not things that happen in a traditional classroom setting as was designed 100 years ago and that we're slowly evolving away from. When I say that we want to think about personalization, I recognize that this is a new thing and that it's potentially a lot of work to get done. So why am I suggesting that? Why am I making the recommendation that we should do it? And the answer is that the world is getting more complex and it's changing now faster than it's ever changed before. And so we need people who can handle new things. We need people who can handle complex types of information. And that means we need to specialize their education to make sure that they're capable of doing that, right? We need people who are going to be able to handle information overload and unreliable news sources and fake news, who can assess the value of conflicting information. And in order to do that, we have to be able to spend time on these things. And in order to spend time on these things, we have to be able to really make efficient use of our education. And if we can say this person has this stuff down pat, they don't need this, let's focus on this other thing with them. If we can personalize to that, we're going to be able to cover more stuff. And I think that's hugely important. Also, the world is changing. That means that job markets are changing. So the new workforces of the future are going to have to deal with different demands than we did growing up. When I was a kid, I wanted to be an art teacher. And do you know how many kids today learn art just by watching YouTube or watching people on streams, and then they just post their own drawings to Instagram and get immediate feedback from people 24 hours a day? So that's totally different than what I imagined when I was thinking about being an art teacher when I was a kid. And I could probably still be an art teacher, but if I wanted to be successful at it, the smart way to do it would be to figure out how to scale that business by offering online classes and video content and one-on-one tutoring over Zoom, because otherwise, why are they going to pay to come to me instead of just getting all the free content that's online, right? So I could do this and I could figure out ways to do it, but that's a whole other skill set. That's a new skill set. So the job markets are changing. And I think that that's really important because of the last point, which is that the workforce is becoming global. So the second I decided I want to be an art teacher, and the way I'm going to make a living doing this is I'm going to offer stuff online, I'm competing against everyone online that's doing that. So the workforce is going to be more competitive. It's not going to be just about you and the people near you. You don't have to be the best person in the room now. You're going to be, one of the best people in the world to get attention. And so we have to find ways to improve education. And we know that personalization can do that. If you're a teacher, you probably know it because you've probably had kids who were falling behind in a class, and you said, this kid needs additional tutoring, that maybe they need to come into summer school, or maybe they need after school stuff, or maybe they need special assignments on top of the regular stuff, right? That's personalization. Or you've had kids who get bored in class because they finish stuff early and then they just cause trouble and distract everyone else. But if they could take that extra free time and funnel it into new things, then they would be able to enhance their ability. Or if you could find a way to have them work with other kids and bring up the whole group, that's personalization. And with the world changing and with the job markets becoming more competitive, we need to be able to do that. So what if you could become every kid's private tutor? Obviously that sounds impossible, but the advantages there are huge. And so personalization is us figuring out how to do that thing. So before I move on to the next point, like I said, I'm going to try and help us talk about how we can solve all these things at the end. But before I move on to the next point, this last slide is just another re-emphasis of why we need to do something in education, why we need to figure out ways to improve and evolve our education. What you're seeing here are a fast food worker, a worksite security observer worker, and a warehouse employee, a fulfillment warehouse employee, right? That's what those three things are. And I've known human beings that had all three of those jobs in my life. And the fact of the matter is, people will not be having those jobs for a whole lot longer. Delivery drivers are not going to have the same job now 10 years from now. They're just not. And so what we're seeing is a lot of the jobs are going away. And that means that we need to evolve education, not to suit those jobs, but to suit the new jobs that are coming in. And one of the ways that we do that is by providing people with skills that these workers that we're seeing here don't have. And one of the things that these workers are not yet good at is collaboration. We all know about the 4 C's: critical thinking, creativity, collaboration, and communication. They are all important, but I really want to focus on collaboration today because I think that it's going to be very important in the future. Like moving forward in every job, I believe that it is going to be one of the most valuable skills that you can have. And we'll talk about that more. So let's talk about what it is, why does it matter, and then at the end, we'll cover what we should do about it. We probably all have an idea of what collaboration is and why it matters, but I want to dive into those because I think there's some interesting things that we can sort of like reassess. So I grabbed a definition here. I'm sorry, I can't remember where I meant to put where I got this quote from, and I can't remember. I'll have to find that. It says, too often we use the term collaboration interchangeably with cognate terms like cooperation and, oh no, the other one got cut off there. Coordination is the other one. I accidentally cut off my quote. Like terms like cooperation and coordination. But we shouldn't do that. Collaboration is something different than cooperating or coordinating. And I thought that was really interesting because I think collaboration is just working together. But there are a lot of different ways to work together. So let's use some examples. If you asked me to help you move, you're moving to a new house and you asked me to help pack everything up and move, I'm cooperating with you towards your goal, but getting you into a new house isn't really serving my personal goals. I'm just cooperating with your things, right? If you are telling your kids to help you set the table and you say, all right, you're going to get all the forks and knives and you're going to get all of the plates and napkins and you're going to take them over there and then you're going to come back and I'll give you your next jobs. First of all, good on you. Those are amazing kids that you have if you're confident in that. But second of all, those kids aren't collaborating with you. You wouldn't call them your collaborators in dinner. You are coordinating them. right? So they are all serving a function towards the larger goals of the whole group, but like you are coordinating their efforts. Whereas collaboration is at its best, everyone is in charge of their own work, everyone is making their own decisions and choosing how to achieve their goals and then bringing those things together. You know, when I'm collaborating with someone, I don't think of them as being in charge of me on this process. If I want to feel like I'm collaborating with someone, I want to feel like we all have equal say, that we can bring our own creativity to the table and that we can work together. And I think that's hugely important because of why we need collaboration. Oh, look, I don't know why I got cut off, but there it is. That's so funny. So let's talk about why we need it. And once again, this is because the job markets are changing. As we covered in the personalization section, if more and more of the simple jobs are being taken by machines and software and automation, then people need to be prepared to do more complex knowledge work that those machines aren't capable of doing. So robots are taking simple jobs, and the new jobs that are going to be available are primarily going to be knowledge work. And knowledge work frequently requires people from maybe different teams or different groups to collaborate on complex tasks. So collaboration is required for complex tasks, and that's the kind of work we're going to be seeing more of in the future, is people solving complex tasks that machines can't yet solve. So, you know, this is a human skill, and it's going to be necessary for the human jobs that are available in the future. So we need to teach people this thing. So collaboration, because of the complexity of it, is incredibly important for the future of work. And we need to be able to make sure that our students are able to do that. And that's important because most people aren't naturally good collaborators. If you think about, you know, when you were a kid, I gave this example the other day. I was not a good collaborator as a kid because I always chose what X-Man I was going to be on the playground. I was Wolverine. And then sometimes I was a very bad collaborator and I chose what X-Man everyone else was going to be. So I was trying to coordinate how everyone else played. And that was not good of me. And I have since learned, if we were to play X-Men right now, I would ask you who you wanted to be. I would try to hold back my suggestions unless you asked for them. So we need to teach people how to be good collaborators. And the way that we do that is by giving the opportunity for them to do that in a classroom setting, in their educational environments. But we're not going to do that unless we acknowledge the importance of this for the future. You know, so many jobs in the past didn't require collaboration. They didn't require complex knowledge work. And so we were comfortable not having these types of projects inside of the classroom. They're going to be necessary moving forward. So just like I had the robotics slide for personalization, what we're seeing here is a list of jobs. These are actually the jobs that the U.S. Bureau of Labor has determined are decreasing the fastest. There are fewer and fewer of these jobs. These are probably all going to be gone in the next 20 years. Things like mail carriers, postal service clerks, executive assistants. I've known people that had a lot of these jobs too. And the important thing about these jobs going away is that they have a few things in common. They either don't require higher education, and or they are disappearing because of automation and computer technologies that have started to replace them. So, you know, a watch repairer, for example, does require a lot of complex knowledge. You have to be trained pretty well to repair a watch. But the fact of the matter is, because of, you know, our phones, most of us aren't carrying watches. And guess what? The watches that we are carrying are made by the same people who make our phones, and they don't like for you to repair them. So that job is just disappearing. Whereas jobs like, you know, a drilling and boring machine operator is going to disappear because machines are taking them. Some of these things I had to look up what they were, but, you know, aircraft assembly, that's being taken by machines. We know that one. Data entry keys, these are being taken by machines. So we need to teach people to do the things that the machines can't do. And collaboration is a big one of those. So I've set up like a lot of problems for us to solve now. And I've kind of made things pretty dire. But the fact of the matter is that there is hope. You know, we've done things the same way for a long time. We've taught things one way for a long time. And even as, you know, when I was a kid, we had group work, we had projects and stuff. But we were still moving from that old model of everyone sits down in a class and learns the same thing at the same time. And maybe every now and then we're getting special group work, or we're getting to collaborate, or we're getting personalized learning experiences. You know, there was more and more of that as I got older. The fact of the matter is, the reason we didn't do a lot of that stuff and we're doing more of it now is because it's kind of hard to personalize work for every student if you are just having, if the tools that you have available are you and, you know, the classroom things that we had when I was a kid. So the thing that can change this, and the question that we want to ask ourselves, and the thing that I mentioned at the beginning, is how can technology help us achieve the goals that we have for the future of learning and for the future of work? And the way that I'm going to handle this is by talking about how our technology. I'm going to give out some examples from our stuff because that's, the thing that's on my mind the most. But so many of these things, as you're going to see, will also apply to, any other technology. The idea here is that the tools that are coming and the tools that are available make this work easier for you. And they're going to make it easier for you to do these things if you adopt the mindset of making personalization a priority, of making collaboration a priority. And we as a company are trying to make those a priority, on our end when we're developing tools and when we're developing curriculum. So let's take a look at personalization. One of the things I think is important, the first one there is having flexible learning schedules. I think asynchronous learning is really valuable. When you have access to learning materials online at all times in digital spaces, so those kids I was talking about who are watching art videos on YouTube, there are videos for how to learn anything. So if you can learn anything at any time, asynchronous learning becomes a lot more of a possibility. That's what I was talking about when I said personalized learning was harder before. It was because you were the source of information, but you don't have to be the sole source of information anymore, which opens up opportunities for things like asynchronous learning. And it's not just important because we're in a pandemic, although it is definitely important because we're in a pandemic, but it's because of that thing I said earlier about students learning at their own pace. So we implemented asynchronous learning into our further learning platform, for example, our website that has all of our curriculum on it. Teachers can build a classroom and then assign all of the projects at once. Students can work on the assignments in any order. They can work on, one student can be working on one while another student is working on another. Students can jump back and forth and learn different parts of them at different times. They're going to be able to work at their speed. And because it's all digital, the teacher is able to check in on that as they go, which I think is important. The second one that we see there is open-ended project-based learning. I absolutely love project-based learning because, like I said, I'm a hands-on learner, but not just that. You can have project-based learning that isn't necessarily all sort of kinesthetic learning. But we've baked that into all of our challenges and our products now, especially I've got the Pi Top 4 with the robotics kit here. Like I said, this thing is so much about hands-on, open-ended, project-based learning. Right now, I'm adding new things to mine just so I can figure out how to make them work in certain ways. I got this thing driving and I immediately said, cool, but how do I add like brake lights and reverse lights and headlights? And that was me taking the things that I was interested in, and they were what motivated me to learn further. That wasn't yet in our lessons. But that's the value of project-based open-ended learning is kids can bring their own interests to it. Everyone can bring their own interest to it. So all of our projects might start with the same, what we call assemble phase, where everyone's doing the same thing. But the idea is that at the end of that lesson, by the end of that lesson, everyone has brought in their own stuff and everyone's stuff looks different. And that's really important because then you can have, you can have a lot of collaboration happen when people are ending up with different results because they can share those things. We'll talk about that in a minute. And lastly, an important thing about personalization is the ability for you to be more of a guide or a coach and inspire your students rather than being the source of instruction. Like I said, if they have tons of sources for research and information and instruction, then your job becomes, providing a guide and a pathway to those things, and inspiring them to look further. One of my favorite things to do when a kid would say, hey, I'm done, when I would be teaching them, Scratch, building programs in Scratch, if they went through that entire assemble phase and they did every one of the steps and they said, cool, I built the thing, I would say, that's awesome. Can you make it cooler? I had a group of kids where I joked with them, actually, I said, as Kanye West says, it could be iller, dog. And kids thought that was hilarious. And so I started going around saying like, yeah, you did everything, but it could be iller. And then they would start bringing in their own interest and saying, how do I make the thing that I finished cooler? So as a coach and a guide, you can say, hey, you got this far, but what about these things over here that I've seen other people do? You should watch these YouTube videos and see if you can integrate these things. And that motivates them with this project-based open-ended learning stuff to start bringing in new things and to try harder. And we've tried to bake that into every one of our projects that we have. So you can actually see a little bit of that here. This is that further learning platform of ours, and this was me working with a student. And what you see here is, they are making a comment on the work as they're doing it. They're saying, hey, I tried this thing and it didn't work. And instead of giving them the answers or instead of telling them what to do, we've tried to make all of our work one of those information resources like a YouTube video. We've tried to make it where they can be self-guided through it. And so you can see the comments that I'm making, they're saying, it's okay, double check the stuff that you did versus what was in the code above you. And that's teaching them, to focus on it themselves. I'm able to give this sort of personal instruction to one student here and then bounce over to another student's assignment and give that to them as well. So they're all able to, as they're working, focus on their stuff, what they're doing, and I'm easily able to drop in and out. We think that's hugely important. Next up, I want to talk about how collaboration can be changed by technology. How do we promote the kind of collaboration that we're going to be seeing in the future of work? The first one is easy: assign more group work, right? Any opportunity that you have to force kids to work together, do it. And you always end up with kids who are going to like show up and get the grade without having shown up and done any of the work. A big thing that technology can allow you to do, especially if everyone's working on different projects at different times and you can't be everywhere at once, is have that work digitized. So you just saw that comment section. Well, if students are working on one of those assignments on Further together, as the teacher, I can see all of the discussion that's happening. So I can expect all of them to participate. I can see the way that they're working together. When you have work digitized, it doesn't matter if your students are working on it at home. It doesn't matter if they're working on it after school or in groups and you can't be everywhere at once. Having a digital record of the work that they're doing is really valuable. And so you can make more collaborative assignments once you start relying on these other tools to help you make things happen. And the second one I kind of referenced earlier, it's that adding a share phase to individual assignments. So maybe every student is doing a project-based thing, but they're not doing it as a group. They're all going off in their own different directions. At the end of that, even if they started at the same point, because they're bringing their own stuff to it, all of them are going to look different when they're done. So having a share phase at the end where one student says, hey, I started the project like everyone else this way, but then I changed these things about it. Someone else says, I changed these. So I added brake lights and I added reverse lights and things like that to my robot. But someone else might say, I made it so that when my robot drives, it's playing music or it's making a backup beeping sound. And I say, oh, cool, I can take that. Adding those phases means that you don't always have to be the instructor. Once again, the kids are now that additional source of information. They're the YouTube video that the other kids go to learn something new. So anytime you have an individual assignment, if it's open-ended and project-based, you can add a share phase at the end where they figure out how to integrate those things together. And I think that's huge for collaboration and cross-pollination, and robots can't do it yet. So that's super important. And lastly, allow students to collaborate on portions of assignments. So maybe you take an assignment and break it down into different chunks. This is something that I really love about our Further Learning platform. And we were talking at the beginning of this about the idea of having an A group and a B group at school, where maybe one's at school while the other is at home. You can have one group of kids have a Pi top in front of them or any piece of hardware that you're able to do this with. And one group of kids does the physical computing. They're hooking up the wires and the buttons and the lights and they're building it. Another kid is maybe writing the code that's going to make all of that work. And a third kid is figuring out what the box is that they're going to put all those things in. So that 3D modeling at the bottom there is me figuring out if I was going to build like a cardboard robot and take all of the guts that my coworker is putting together and all the code that they're doing, how would I build the encasing and enclosing thing for it? With our robot kit, it's the same way. You could have one kid assembling the robot kit while another kid is programming the lights and the buttons and things, and another one's writing the code, and a fourth one is building a presentation that's going to show here's how we solved the problem that was set before us. You have a whole other group doing that as well. When you have these things online and when they're digital and when you're working with technology that allows you to break that up in the way that platforms like Further do, you're able to do more of this stuff than if you just set the kids down in groups at school. It's harder to get that level of collaboration without the tools that allow them to do different things in different ways at different times at different places. So I just think that that's hugely important. So just to wrap up, because I want to make sure that we have time for any sort of questions or discussion points that we want to talk about here. I'm going to go back to those big ideas. Personalization, which is coming for everything, is able to improve learning. We know that if you spend time with an individual student on their strengths, their weaknesses, the areas where they move faster or slower than other students, if you focus on their interests, you're going to be able to improve their learning experience. And we can use platforms like Further or Google Classrooms or Clever, any of those, all of those. We can use those to digitize the information, give the kids the resources that they need, and help them on their specific path, right? Collaboration is a human skill that is going to become essential to work. And it's going to become essential to human work because of the fact that robots can't yet do it. Kids aren't necessarily good at it right out the gate, so we need to find as many ways to make it happen as possible so that they can get the jobs that robots can't. And technology, like I said, can help foster the personalized learning and the collaboration that we need by providing these new tools. That's what we focus on as a company, is finding ways to allow people to do new and different things together in new and different ways. And that's what we have to do in classrooms, is we have to look for the things that are going to be, different from what's already here. Because what's already here, people are trying to find ways to automate it. The things that we've done in the past, people are trying to find ways to have machines or software do those things. So we need to look to technology to make our teaching jobs easier so that we can provide new skills and new information. So that is everything from me. We have a good amount of time right now for a Q&A. So if you have any questions about, the stuff that I talked about the products that I showed off, or really anything, feel free to ask those in the chat. And Matt, I'm going to hand that to you.
Awesome. So yeah, so we have a question here from Thomas right now. It says, how would you start the base level Python functionality and commands? How do you go about doing that?
So this is something that I'm actually really interested in. I design, like I said, a lot of our curriculum. And I said I was a hands-on learner. Part of my problem learning code has always been that, like, I want to be able to see interesting results to it. When I first started learning code, I was learning HTML. And that was really great to me because it was about like how things looked on a screen. So I was building websites and I was controlling the visuals, and I would write something and hit refresh and the page would change. And it was kind of exciting. We need things like that. We need things that aren't just an IDE where you write some Python code and in the text box at the bottom, you get hello world. Hello world is a fine start, but it's very, very boring. And so much of learning Python on its own, if we're being honest, it doesn't look exciting at first. What I like about the stuff that we've done, and there are other options, there's similar options that do a lot of this too, but the thing that we care about is making those things engaging. So the very first lesson that I always take people through on the PyTop, we do some like really basic tutorials where we say, this is how you use the PyTop. And the first one of those lessons is showing you, it's like step one, take the PyTop and click it into this thing right here. This foundation plate allows us to add components to it. So then step two is just take this clicky button, for example, plug that in. And then step three is run some Python code that we're going to give you. And they run the code. They don't have to know it. They don't have to understand it. We're just teaching them how to run Python code. And we say, cool, that code makes it so that every time you press the button, it says something on the screen. So that hello world has now jumped out of the white, boring IDE, and it's in a physical thing in the real world. And it only happens when they interact with a real thing. And that's so much more satisfying than just hitting run inside of Mu or inside of idle or another Python IDE. Making it so that a person's first Python code lights up an LED, plays an annoying sound on a buzzer that they get to laugh about, clicking a button, doing cool things is important. And that's kind of what we've done is we've said, let's take that initial entry point and make that as interesting for beginners as we can so that they want to climb those steps to the more advanced stuff.
Eli, would you mind taking your screen share off really quick? I think some of the attendees are having a hard time seeing what you're doing.
Yep. There we go. Okay, cool.
All right, perfect. So we got a couple questions. Kathy here has two questions. Well, the third was about the screen sharing, but all right. So I got to see where you went, Kathy. So she's asking, what age/grade levels do you think could start using it? Follow-up question. Also, is there a natural progression/easy transition from Blockly to Python?
I'm so glad you asked that question. That is a question where if I could have chosen a plant in the audience to ask a question so that I got to talk about something I cared about, that's the question it would have been. So I actually last year, right before the pandemic hit, maybe it was November 29th, I don't remember. Anyway, right beforehand, I got to go to an elementary school and we were trying to get feedback from kids about the product because it was relatively new. And the first thing that I did is I was like, I want them to just kind of get familiar with this weird thing they've never seen before. And you can make a few of the things happen with Scratch. So I would say we're going to learn in Scratch how to turn on a light and how to activate a button. Once they got comfortable with that first step, I said, cool, now we're going to do the exact same thing in Python. And they would do it, and that was a smooth transition for them, is taking those training wheels off. So there are easy ways to do that. But what you asked about specifically was Blockly, and I'm super excited about that because that's on our roadmap right now. We're super interested in being able to make sure that Blockly works with the PyTop 4, and we're not ready to announce anything yet, but we're actively working on that so that they can go from something like Scratch to something like Blockly, which shows you the Python besides the block-based code. And then we can just transition away from the block-based entirely once they get familiar with it. You don't always necessarily need it. Like I said, I had 4th and 5th graders doing Python code on the PyTop. We just did a little bit of Scratch first, and it worked. But Blockly is a much smoother transition, and we are absolutely focused on getting that hopefully within the next few months. Fingers crossed.
Perfect. All right, and Thomas is asking if he has some of the older sensors, I think it was from the seed, is what he said. Are they compatible with PyTop 4?
Man, You guys are really making me happy with these questions. That's another great question. I literally talked about that same thing today on a call with some coworkers. So yes is the answer. First of all, the short answer is yes. The PyTop 4, what I love about it is if you want to start with the really easy stuff that I was showing, so you snap it into this plate and you can just plug in these things. You don't have to worry about breadboarding. These cables plug in really easily. But if you do want to go to breadboarding and you do want to use some of those older components, we've actually got full access to the Raspberry Pi's GPIO pins right here. And the thing about this that the Raspberry Pi itself does not have, and if you've used the Raspberry Pi, it's a game changer, is we've labeled those pins. So anytime you did anything, even with our older products, we had to create little guides to show you what those pin numbers were. So when we said plug something into pin 13, you had a guide that showed you. And we just said, we're going to print the guide on here. So this is actually the easiest way to do a lot of those older projects. Yeah, absolutely.
Outstanding. All right. Does anybody else have any questions? I think, Bree, do you see any that I might have missed in there?
No, I think that we got them all.
All right, cool. Looks like we got all of the questions taken care of. And Bree, do we have a winner for our giveaway of the PyTop 4 and the Foundations kit? Oh.
We do. Do you want to say or you want me to?
Oh, rock, paper, scissors? No, I'll do it. No, you do it. I lied. No, I'll do it. Okay. All right. So it looks like the winner is Yvonne Hackett. So congratulations, Yvonne. So I'm going to go ahead and add a message here to the chat with my email address. So please send me your your shipping information, and we can get your prize sent out to you as soon as possible. Sorry, I'm not great at multitasking. Typing and talking does not work. So congratulations, Yvonne. We'll get that to you as soon as possible.
Hey, Matt, while you're multitasking there, I'll help you out and give the audience some great news. So everybody that is in attendance today will also receive an email from Brianna with a 30% off voucher on the robotics kit, which is fresh right off the press. So you guys please take advantage of that. That's 30% off, and you'll see it in your email tomorrow.
Yeah, perfect. So yeah, anybody that joined the live attendance today is going to get that voucher code in your email. So make sure that you don't just click delete on this follow-up email in the morning. It's a great way to get started with that robotics kit right away. Just make sure that when you reach out to us for a quote or on your purchase order that you put that voucher code in the email and on your purchase order as well, so we can make sure we get those savings for you. All right, so it doesn't look like I have any more questions coming in here. Again, thank you, Yvonne. I'm going to go ahead and steal the screen one more time. And of course, thank you, Eli and Carlo, for joining us today. It was awesome. I learned a lot. Judging from the engagement in the chat, looks like everybody learned a lot today. So it's really exciting to see that level of excitement and engagement with our educators in the chat. So again, thank you guys for joining us.
Thanks for having us, Matt. Thank you, everyone. Have a great one.
My pleasure. All right, so there's 3 key points that I kind of wanted to cover. So Eli did a fantastic job today, but there's 3 good takeaways that I want everybody to kind of go home with on this. So personalization is coming for absolutely everything. So preparing your students best ways to use that personalization to their benefit, whether it's in future career paths or even in their schoolwork. And then also collaboration matters, that true meaning of collaboration, getting your students to collaborate to finish those higher level tasks, and technology exists to make things easier. So once they can master that technology and kind of tie all of these things in together, your students are really off to the next level. So again, thank you for those great points, Eli. All right, so now that we've gone through all of this, you might be asking, how do we contact you? How do we source this stuff from PyTop? Well, that's why we're here. So feel free to reach out to us at any time. at orders@makermaven.net. There's a little QR code in the bottom right-hand screen there. If you have your device handy, you can scan that QR code, and it'll take you to our digital catalog, which we try to keep updated as often as possible. Also, you can call us on our toll-free number there. It's 877-MAKER-75. We've also added a really cool feature to our website. So if you go to our shop page at makermaven.net, you can just shop like any other shopping experience, build your cart, and you can actually request a quote directly from your cart. So that takes away the middleman of contacting a sales rep or making a phone call or waiting for email responses. You can build that quote right on your own. And within 24 hours, Monday through Friday, of submitting your quote request, we'll have an official quote sent to the email address you provide in that quote request form. And again, thank you everybody for joining us today. We have tons of free resources on our website at makermaven.net. All of our social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, at maker_maven, as well as our brand new YouTube channel where all of our webinars are going to be hosted as well. So if for some chance you got cut out and you missed something, or even if there's something that you want to go back and see from the presentation, it will be live on our YouTube channel tomorrow, I believe tomorrow morning. So you can always go back and refer to older webinars that you may have missed in the past that you may not even know that we have done. Subscribe to our newsletter for free STEM challenges. I think they're sent out monthly, as well as some other great resources. And don't forget to register for our upcoming webinars as well. So we have our next webinar coming up 2 weeks from today. I believe it's with 3Ducks. So 3Ducks Design, a great way for your students to build and create using cardboard creation. So that'll be a fantastic one as well on how to get some more engineering concepts built into your lessons. So that's it for me today. Thank you again, everybody, for joining us.